you want me to take the podium down, or?
You know,
Well,
we got such a nice little group here. I'll just
Yeah.
kind of stand in the front here. And,
That sounds good.
I mean, why not?
Well, thank you for being here tonight. I
Well, thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me. And the rest of the world, you're lost. That's okay. Someday,
We gather the willing.
they will rue the day they miss this.
We gather the willing, right?
Yes. But I thank you both very much for coming
Yeah.
tonight.
Our
I don't know
pleasure.
if you heard our earlier conversation, but we met a year ago in June
Oh, okay.
at the Pause Walk, which is an SPCA event.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I've been going to that for 4 or 5 years now.
Really?
You have too?
Yeah.
So,
Quite a
It's the
number of
first time
years.
I've saw you there, but
And, yeah, well, they bounce me around
Yeah.
different spots, but I think it's a great organization, and I try to do as much as I can with them.
mhm.
And so that's where we met, and got him started on the books, and he's working his way
Nice.
right through the series.
Excellent.
And he was getting nervous because he was
There are more
wondering
coming,
when the
huh?
next one is coming out. So
More
I think we're
coming.
going to time it just about right for him.
Great.
Well, thank you
which
for
is
being
great.
here tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I will say I don't remember all of our conversation, but just to kind of, as an introduction, I started writing, well, the first book came out in 2009. I probably started working on it in 2006. And I became a writer totally by accident. I didn't plan on it. I didn't intend to be a writer. I never had any designs towards that. But as life circumstances changed for me, this was something I started intending to just be a co-author with a friend. As it turned out, I was the only one that put words on paper, and discovered that it was just an awful lot of fun. And after I finished the first book, I just kept on trucking, and I decided at that point, because I did enjoy it, that if you want to try and get it to where you might make a living at something like this, if you're going to have a product to sell, you have to produce it. So I made a decision at that point that I felt a book a year was a reasonable expectation to put on myself. And so that's my self-imposed deadline. And so far it's worked. Every year in November I have a new book come out.
So how many books are there now?
7 now.
7.
I'm working on number 8.
And it starts with Harbor Ice?
Harbor Ice.
Yep.
Harbor Ice, Changing Tides, Dangerous Shoals, Killer Run, Evil Intentions, Unexpected Catch, and the latest is Black Schooner.
Oh, really? I
Yep.
don't know why I thought Unexpected Catch was first.
Nope, that was number
Oh, all right.
6. And what I've discovered as I've written the books is that it's a continuing story. The same cast of characters, they're just ordinary people. There's nobody that's a super detective or, ex-Black Ops operator or any of that stuff. They're just ordinary people who seem to manage to get into trouble in one way or the other. And some of it is just normal relations between people, what happens and when some new character comes in and causes turmoil and whatever. I like to say that, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but these are your classic cheesy beach reads. We have a little mystery, we have a little suspense, we have a little romance, and for good measure we throw in a couple dead bodies. I figure, what more do you need? And it seems to be working, because I'm getting a very good following. I hear from people continuously about the books, from people that have just discovered them, or to the point that, kind of a funny story, but last summer, middle of the summer, I got this very nice email from a gal who had just finished reading the 3rd book, Dangerous Shoals. And in that book, there is a point in time when Jack, my protagonist, and his girlfriend Max, they had gone away on a sailing trip, and bad weather fogged them in, and they were stuck for several days. And this woman wrote me a very detailed, very concerned email. Who was taking care of Cat, Jack's pet cat?
Yeah.
And she was very worried about this. And I was like, really? And, you know, I keep getting those kind of things. So I figure I'm touching somebody on some level, and that's a good thing. And what I've found, though, as the series has gone on, and one of the challenges I set for myself is to try to avoid writing the same story over and over and over.
Right.
And I think so far I've done a reasonably good job of keeping the stories fresh. And one of the ways that I've done that, and I'm continuing with, is that both with Unexpected Catch and Black Schooner, I found a way to introduce a new character that I think works really well. I have donated to fundraising auctions for New Hampshire Public Television and for the New Hampshire SPCA the possibility to become a character in my next book. So if you win the auction, your name, you will be in the next book. Now the caveat is, there's no guarantee whether you're going to be good, bad, male, female, dead or alive. But you will be in the book. And as it's turned out, in both Unexpected Catch and again Black Schooner, the characters turned out to be significant to the story and an awful lot of fun to write. And I think it really gives a fun dimension to that. I learned the first time I did it with Unexpected Catch, that was with the SPCA auction. And I learned my lesson on this one because I hadn't thought it through. It was just more of a concept than anything. But I knew the gentleman's name who had won, was the high bidder. So I wrote the part. I used his name throughout the book as a great part, places roll all the way through. And when I finished, I shot him an email and I said, you know, I just want to let you know I finished the book, you've got a great character, yada yada. And he got right back to me and he said, oh, well, since we bought this at the SPCA auction, we really wanted our dog to be in the book. That was the character he wanted. And I said to myself, well, I don't have time and I'm not rewriting it to fit a dog in. But his dog's name was Peeves, as in pet peeves, I guess. And he was just a energetic, wiry little terrier, you know, ankle nipper. And so I just renamed that character Alistair Peeves. And it worked perfectly. And he was delighted. And so I just thought it was just a kick to do. And the character in this book, he's a gentleman who lives in Nashua. And what I found is that it's a really great way for someone to have, you get 2 Christmas presents out of it. Because the first year, you win the auction, and you give that to someone as their Christmas present. The next year, they get the book. It's perfect. And I've done it again with this new book that I'm working on now, the 8th book in the series. And I haven't fully figured out the guy yet, but got some ideas. And it's going to be interesting. Yes?
But you make money. This is how you make your money.
Well, I'm trying.
Oh, okay. Do you have a day job?
I look at myself as gainfully unemployed.
Nothing wrong with that.
Semi-retired.
Do what you love, the
I
money
work
will follow.
part-time,
It's
and
just
I'm
like
trying to,
people,
you know, make
That's
this
all right.
happen.
Well, good for you.
And this is just more fun than anything else I've ever done. Because what's happened is my characters, they become my friends and family. They live in my head. We go places together. We talk to each other, their lives and my, you know, we all
So
just...
you don't have one character like Dan Brown has the
well,
same character.
Jack Beale is my main
you
protagonist.
do have, like, whatever you
He's
call
kind
it,
of the main
protagonist,
one,
yeah.
but it's really a cluster of characters. But you know, these characters, you know, they live in my head. They're my friends and family. And the beauty of writing, one of the beauties of it is that if these characters piss me off for any reason, I can kill them. And there's no problem. You can't do that with your regular friends and family.
There you go. Works for me. That's cool.
And it just, it's just one of the little benefits that I've
And
discovered.
this is your 7th book.
Black Schooner is my 7th book. So, like I had said, is with the last 2 books, I had introduced new characters through this vehicle of charity auctions. So I figured it's the best of both worlds. And that, has forced me to think more creatively about the characters and their relationships. And I've also, even though Jack Beale is my primary character, in later stories, he doesn't necessarily play the leading role. There are other characters that come in and play stronger roles that might have been minor characters in the early books. And that's because it is this group of friends, and as they muddle their way through life, things seem to just happen. And it pulls them into these adventures, and they manage to dig themselves out. And as the different stories have developed, it's been very interesting, the reactions that I get from people, especially when I do introduce a new character. He was asking me earlier, there's a gal I introduced her first in Killer Run, which was the 4th book, and her name is Sylvie. And I didn't expect anything to come of Sylvie. She was just incidental to the story on the periphery. But I did end the book with kind of a hanging chad, I guess you could say, a little teaser. And I got a really strong reaction to her.
From your reader.
From my readers. I mean, I get bombarded with emails saying, who is this? What are you doing? I'm not happy about this.
Oh, they didn't like her.
They don't like her at all. Which has just made me like her more and more. And so she keeps it up.
Fatale or something? Or?
Well, I haven't completely figured her out. I can tell you that she is either a very good person who does some very bad things, or she's a very bad person who happens to do some very good things.
She sounds interesting.
The one thing that's for sure is she has this thing for Jack.
Oh,
and
there's a romantic thing.
He is, well, we don't know just how far he's reacted to this because
you don't
he
have
doesn't
him get in bed with her or anything like that.
Well, I don't think he has. No.
Maybe you did it when you weren't looking.
These things can happen. Jack pretty much tries to stay out of her clutches, but she keeps putting him in difficult situations.
Jack's single, I'm assuming.
And yes, he is. But his girlfriend, whose name is Max, she really does not like this girl.
I can understand why.
And they've even had times when they've had to work together, which makes it awkward. And it's silly fun.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So this Jack is not you.
I could not be that cool. I deny any resemblance in any of the books to anybody living or anything. I have friends who swear they know who different characters are. I deny it all. And I just leave it that I made it all up, and you can believe whatever you like.
Where'd you live?
Greenland.
Oh. I don't know how come I haven't found you before.
I'm shocked.
I'm a big mystery reader. Not a writer, a reader.
Yeah.
What was your first book? I like to read the
Harbor Ice.
What was it?
Harbor Ice.
Harbor Rice?
Ice.
Ice. Oh, okay.
Harbor Ice. Each of the stories begins and ends in the fictionalized town of Rye Harbor, New Hampshire.
Oh, it's local.
very local. Travels up and down the coast. The books do travel out of the area, but they will always return. The second book, Changing Tides, actually spends probably half the book in Belize.
Are most of your readers here in New Hampshire? Or?
They're all over the place. I'd say the vast majority are in this southern.
So your publisher gets your name out there to these other people? Or
I
carry
work
your book
very
in
hard at
bookstores or library? Does the library have your book?
Libraries have them. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, most of the local libraries have them.
Doug is his own publisher.
Oh, you self-publish?
I am the most shameless self-promoter, but I do publish using Amazon's Create Space.
So you are your own publisher? So you've got money, you've got skin in the game.
Oh, I got a lot of skin in the game. It's called incentive. You learn the lessons of how to sell books and self-promote.
It's not enough to just write it, you've got to get it sold, right?
2/3 of my time is spent
Promoting it.
promoting it. Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, it's just been a fun adventure. And I enjoy getting out and meeting people and talking to people.
But you're very personable.
And I'll go anywhere if I think I can have a conversation and sell a book. I mean, I go to farmers markets and craft fairs.
Oh,
And
you're not proud.
I go to, I'll be at the Made in New Hampshire Expo at the end of April for 3 days over in Manchester. That's a grind. But, oh
How old are
yeah,
you?
old enough to.
You don't have to,
probably-
I'm 70, I'm proud
I'm
of it.
66.
All right, there you go, I got you beat. You don't look 66, you look very young.
I don't.
Didn't mean to ask you an embarrassing
No,
question.
that's fine, that's fine. And that's one of the reasons why I self-published. Because at this point in my life, anybody's life, when you get into your mid-60s, you know, the finish line is in sight. You know, you don't know exactly where it is, but, you know, it's not like I have decades to
No,
develop
I'm planning my
this.
funeral.
And, you know, so I mean, I looked at it, I said, you know, I'm too impatient. I can't wait. I don't have the energy and I can't wait to try and find a publisher, get somebody to publish it, and rely on somebody else to sell me and make
Does
this
the
all
publisher
happen.
give you an advance, like, if you had a publisher, they give you an advance to write the book? Or how does
Well,
that work?
you know, advance sounds really cool, but from everything I understand, it's technically a loan.
Oh, you
And
have
if
to pay
the
it back?
book goes bust,
Ooh,
you're on the hook for it.
really? Oh, wow, I didn't know.
That's my
that.
understanding. And so I felt that, you know, I'm just gonna truck along here, and the sales have grown steadily every year. And at some point, I'm hopeful that somebody, you know, a little bit bigger will discover these and, you know, find a way to get me out to a wider audience.
You need somebody to make a new movie of your book. That's
I hear that a lot.
I know. that's
I
what
really
they
do. And I'll tell you an interesting thing about that. Whenever that subject has come up, the question I always say to people who have read the books is, okay, who do you envision as these characters? How do you envision them? Who do you think could play those characters?
Oh, okay.
Because I can't put any faces with any
movie
of them.
stars could play your character, is that what you're saying? Which of the movie stars would be
Yeah,
appropriate?
movie star, whoever,
Okay.
whatever.
Do they come up with people or no?
Well, some people do. I have no idea. I can't really tell you what Jack looks like. And I have a very strong impression of him, and I think you will. What happens is, I think with all of my characters, with all of the stories, I try to let the reader's mind do a certain amount of the work. That's the beauty of books, to me, as opposed to movies. Movies are wonderful. Television is wonderful. They tell great stories. But once you see that on the screen, that's what you see. That's someone's
influences
vision.
you, yeah.
That's what the guy looks like. That's and
I
it's
always
ingrained.
read the book before the movie.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you read this, you know, you're going to have a different picture in your mind of who Jack is and what he looks like and how tall he is and all of that.
Right.
You're going to have a different impression. You're going to have a different impression. And And I think that's really the magic of reading, and if it's written in such a way that it allows people to do that. So, like with the books, none of them get terribly graphic in terms of dead bodies or murder victims or
sex
whatever,
or that stuff.
or sex, exactly. I try to set the scene. I try to give you enough information that you got a very clear idea of what's going on. But it doesn't need to be really clinically detailed,
Okay.
And since you brought that up, I'll tell you another funny story. I like telling stories. And what the heck?
There you go.
When the first book was, when I was still learning to write, I rewrote that book 8 times before it was
You went to
finally.
writer's school, or you just taught yourself?
I just taught myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it 8 times before it was worth getting published. At the end of the original manuscript, I had given the book to a friend of a friend. He put me in touch with this gal who had done some editing for him, had done some work in publishing, and she graciously said she would give it a read and give me feedback.
So she edited it for you?
No, she just read it to give me feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And she did, which sort of surprised me. But I got this phone call from her. She said, I finished the book. And I said, great, let's get together sometime. So we got together and we sat down and danced around it for 40 minutes or so, had a glass of wine, a lot of small talk. And finally, it was time. She had to say something about the book, or about the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me and she said, well, I really liked your last sentence.
At least she read the whole book. And what did she like about
It
your last
was
sentence?
that bad.
She wrote
Oh my
the last
God.
sentence. It's over? I mean,
That-
it was so thrilling that she had finished it? Wow.
But here's the thing about it.
That's tacky.
I didn't know enough to know that she just hit me in the head with a shovel. I thought, wow, that's great.
Oh, geez.
But it can be better. And so I proceeded to rewrite it, let it sit a
Well,
few
at least
weeks,
you didn't give up.
read and rewrite, read and rewrite. And at the end of different versions, I would pass it off to a friend of mine or a couple friends or something. And my questions always were, does the story make sense, and are the characters viable? Are they believable?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as those came up yes, then I knew I could refine the writing, I could build more detail, I could get it filled out.
Did your wife edit it for you?
No,
Oh, you
I have
put it
a
in.
professional editor.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I learned very early that you can't do some things yourself, and I have cover designer,
And an
interior
editor
layout.
just checks it for punctuation and that
No,
kind of stuff?
she tears me a new one.
Oh, really?
She explains to me very clearly that I'm just dumb as a stump and I gotta fix things.
So has she been with you for the whole get-go? Or?
We've worked together now on 5 books.
Oh, interesting.
And every time I give her a new manuscript, I am so confident that I've learned my
So
lessons.
you pay her to do this?
Oh, yeah.
She has a fee.
I am convinced that I have learned lessons from each book. My writing gets better, the stories get
So you
better.
have a lot of cash outlay before you get any in.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough.
Yes, it is. That's called incentive.
Well, good for you that you're still doing it. Wow.
And, but anyhow, so with this, at the end of the 7th version, and it's real close to being done, and it was really filling out nicely, the characters were getting depth, and it was all working. I gave it to one of my friends, a gal that I used to run with. I was with a running group, and she said she would read it. Now this gal is one of those very smart, intelligent, has a lot of common sense, outspoken, will tell you exactly what she thinks about things in no uncertain terms. So we're running together one night during the winter, and it was dark and it was cold and there's snowbanks, and she said, well, I finished the book. I said, great, how'd you like it? She said, oh, it was good. You're writing a beach read, right? And I said, yes, I am. And Anna said, well, you know, you've done a good job. I think it's going to be a very successful beach read. But, and as soon as she said but, I came very close to just tripping over the curb and landing in a snowbank because I knew something terrible was coming. And I couldn't imagine what she was going to say. So we got another couple blocks down the road, and she said, here's the deal. Every good beach read needs to have a couple pages where you tab the corners down because they're juicy, because there's sex in them, because they're salacious. And he says, you have no sex in this book. You've got to fix that.
I never do that.
Well, obviously you don't live in her world.
I guess not.
But she made it very clear. She said, you know, you have no sex in this book. You've got to have a little bit. Well, that's when I did trip and fall in a snowbank because I panicked. And I went through several weeks of just panic over how do you deal with this? And the kind of thoughts, I mean, crazy thoughts going through my head were, okay, they always say, what do? You write about what you know. Yeah, I'm going to be divorced. This is not good. And I decided that, you know, there were two ways of approaching that. One, you can be very graphic, very clinical, not particularly fun to read. You know, I call it the heaving bazooms and throbbing members school of writing. You know, it's just pretty awful. Or you can create scenes, give just enough detail, just enough to let somebody's head then get into it, where they're reading it and they go, yeah, I remember a night like that. Yeah, and that works. And so I think I've learned to do that fairly well. I like to think I do it fairly well. But I will say that my daughter really doesn't want to read the books because, you know, my dad wrote that, and, you know, she...
How old is she?
35.
She's okay.
And I have other friends, you know, who have had the books, and she said, oh yeah, I get to those pages, I just go right back, because they know me. You know?
Oh, that's funny.
And we get a good laugh over it. I have to explain and remind my friends, because they like to tease my wife and tease me about this. I said, you have to understand, this is the way I think it ought to be, not the way it is. I deny it all.
That's funny.
But, you know, it's part of life. It's part of what goes on in the world, so it should be part of the story. So I like to think, you know, we have a little mystery, a little suspense, a little romance, and for good measure, we throw in a couple dead bodies.
And you call your books beach reads?
Yeah. I mean, some people say, you know, well, technically they're a cozy mystery, but, you know, they're a fun vacation book. You know, it's a book you're going to read. It's light reading. I'm not going to win a Pulitzer Prize with these.
Okay.
I'm not claiming to. Another interesting thing that I'm working on right now is increasingly people have asked me about audiobooks. And so right now I am kind of in the final stages of working out the details with someone to narrate Harbor Ice. And
You're going to do it yourself?
No.
So how about downloading books, that those, you know, when you put them on your Kindle?
Oh yeah, they're all available as
Okay,
ebooks.
cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's fine. But the audiobook is I found it very daunting because the voice will make or break it.
Oh, yeah.
And I received back when I put it out, probably a half dozen auditions. And so I put it out there, I got maybe a half dozen auditions back. Out of those, I worked it down. There were 4 that I liked, each one for various different reasons, but I thought they were all strong candidates. So I gave them those auditions to more than a dozen friends. And even some strangers, just people that I met at a market, and they, in a conversation, they said, oh, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Great. Would you be willing to listen to this audition and tell me what you think of these, who you like the best, And it was a wonderful exercise, except that I came up with an even tie amongst the 4 voices. An equal number of people liked each one. I said, you guys aren't helping me here. So I finally settled on the one that I think will work. And so I'm in contact with him, and he's he hasn't committed to the project. If he does it, he won't be getting to it till probably July. But in the meantime, you know, he needs to see more of the work, more of the book than just those 2 pages of audition material. He needs to know more about the characters and so on.
This is for the first book.
And yeah, and then if I can get this one done, then I intend to just start to roll right through all of them. It gives me another marketplace, another avenue of exposure, and every little bit helps. And I still believe, I don't know if it's 100% true, but I think that there's a certain degree of luck involved that takes writers from being good to that next level where they really get the huge audience, where the audience grows from small audience to big audience. And I'm convinced that it's, you know, if the right person reads it at the right time and they pass it on to the next right person and they say the right thing, all of a sudden, that's how you get these overnight sensations.
Quote unquote.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Right, right.
You know, they go for years. But then all of a sudden, something happens. And I can only call it luck. And I've talked to a number of big name authors that I've met at different times. And that's a very common story. It's not, so I think there's some validity to it. And, you know, part of it is you have to make your own luck to a degree. So, you know, you might be the right person. You know, you're
Why
going
would
to
I
go
be the
and
right person?
you might just in an idle conversation with someone you don't know, tell them about these, and they're going to be the right person, and bang, something happens.
Don't count on me, I'm
Well,
suddenly
I'm just
retired.
using,
So
I'm just using it
I
as
don't
an
think I'm going to be
example.
helping you, but I'll read
I'm just
the
dealing
books.
with the concept here.
Mhm.
But that's, you know, that's what it's all about. And anytime I can, you know, make the books and myself known to anybody, you know, I try to do that. And it's growing.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you're good looking. I think it always helps, right, to have be a good looking person. Just helps sell your book.
Well, you know, I often tell people, I said, you know, because they will ask me if I would narrate my own book as an audio book. And I said, not a chance in hell. I said, you have to understand, not only do I have a face made for radio, I have a voice made for the newspapers. And that just ends it right there. And going back to, you know, the original part of what I wanted to talk about tonight was just some, and I've touched on, just the challenges of the series and bringing new characters in and how all of that tries to keep it fresh and moving. Something very interesting happened in writing Black Schooner. It turned out that some of the key parts of the book went back to events that happened in the very first book. They go back to actually 20 or so years, 20 or 25 years prior to when this story actually takes place. It goes back to when Jack was a much younger man, and it explains how some things happened. I didn't anticipate that, but as the story developed, that happened, and it really made it much more interesting to write because I could answer questions that started way back. That, you know, hadn't, because these books all take place in the present, but that kind of drew on some past histories, which I thought was kind of interesting, that the way that happened. I think, you know, it keeps it interesting.
And you write from an outline?
No.
No.
No, these guys write the stories. When I start a new story, I have no idea where it's going or what it is, or sometimes I don't figure it out till the very end. Actually, with this book, I had one person in mind to be the bad guy in the end, and I got to the very end of the book, he turned out to be an okay guy. Somebody else turned out to be the bad guy that I did not see coming. But they, you know, they write the story. That's why I say they live in my head. They're my buddies. It's kind of interesting.
Where did Gladys come from?
Gladys? She was purely in my imagination, but I could just picture someone like Gladys.
Oh, yeah.
She was good.
She works very well.
Yeah, I liked Gladys. She was fun to write.
And what was on the tape that was jammed into the cassette player out on the boat that Kurt was after? Do you remember, or
Yes.
was there anything on it?
Well, it ended up being corrupted. So
Yeah.
so the information actually ended up not existing. But it was information that Daniel had stolen as his insurance policy or whatever to get out from
Right.
under the thumb of
Okay.
an unknown, unseen, very bad person. And he had stolen this information.
Right.
And he was trying to pass it off. It didn't help him a whole lot. But it kind of resolved some of the storyline from
Yeah.
Changing Tides.
It did to a degree.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that's what it was, but I was kind of hoping that it would get played and something would come to light from it other than being
You know,
corrupted.
I don't know if it's laziness on my part or just the way I approach it, but sometimes I don't think that it's necessary to know
But it keeps you...
what the details of something were. What you need to know is what the result is of those
Yeah.
details. And again, that lets your mind work on this. My wife gets mad at me sometimes. She reads some of the books, and she thinks I leave too many things hanging, especially at the end of the books. She says, God damn it, you didn't answer those questions. You know, why? What's the matter with you?
Yeah, you did the same thing in Deadly Run,
Yeah, Killer.
Killer Run.
Oh, yeah.
That,
Yeah, she's
you never
totally
really come
frustrated
out
with
and
that
said
one.
what was on the quilt,
Right.
you know. And,
I didn't think that it was that necessary to know that level of detail. But some people do. Actually, that story was like 3 stories in one. And you know, the book that set the nutty guy off, he was reading that historical book. So there were those passages that took place in the 1700s, right?
mhm.
I had people emailing me telling me, I got to finish writing that book because they wanted to know what that story was. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. It's not there.
Yeah,
But it was part of the vehicle of showing how this one character was delusional.
Yeah.
How what he was seeing things in things that weren't real, but to him they were real,
yeah,
and they
very.
became very dangerous
Hmm.
to other people.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I like the way. Well, whatever book Kurt was in
Dangerous Shoals.
when he went down to University of Lowell to steal the chemicals and that.
He was a wonderful bad guy.
Yeah.
He was just a wonderful psychopath. And I feel bad saying that, but I mean, he was
No,
a very nasty person.
Yeah.
And the most interesting thing, and I touched on it earlier, but this is the book where Jack's pet cat became a major character, became a character
Right.
in the book. People love this stupid animal.
yeah.
Every time a new book's coming out, there's about half
This
dozen
is the
people.
cat that your reader was worried about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every time a new
Yeah,
book comes
when you
out, I
say
get
what
these emails before, say, oh, new book's coming out. Is Cat okay?
Yeah.
You didn't read the cat, did you?
Did he trip over again? Huh?
People love this animal. And Cat's kind of fun to write, actually.
It doesn't have a name, you just call it Cat.
Yeah, Jack
Yeah.
is so easygoing, he can't take the time to name his pet, so it's Cat.
Oh, wow.
He's just that kind of guy.
Who designs your jackets?
There's a cover designer that I work with. She
Very
lives down in
nice, yeah.
Gloucester. Yeah. And it's, again, those are kind of a collaborative. I took this photograph. Actually, I think I took both of these photographs, but she then works her magic and turns it into things. This dirty little secret that goes with this cover. Care to hazard a guess? This is proof positive that I have legs to die for.
Oh,
Because
gee.
that's me.
Oh,
my
your
God.
legs?
Yes.
Put your own legs there? Well,
That's me.
And did you go to the bottom of the hill?
This was in Stratham Hill Park, actually.
Okay.
We spent a whole afternoon tromping around in the late fall, taking hundreds of pictures in the pucker brush, and finally we ended up with that image that we use.
No.
But so the things you have to do.
looks like a girl's legs.
No.
Oh,
No.
No, I can't see it blind,
No.
maybe not.
What was the exact order of your books?
It was just the way I had them lined up. Harbor Ice,
Oh,
Changing
okay.
I
Tides,
told you you weren't
Dangerous
in order.
Shoals, Killer Run,
Thank
Evil Intentions, Unexpected Catch, and Black Schooner.
Really, I read Unexpected Catch first.
Yep.
Well, maybe
Not
that's
knowing.
because that's the
Well-
one, that's probably the one we
Yeah.
had at the
He had
event
two of
we were
them
at.
there.
So
Yeah.
he always has them in order at the beginning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the actual order.
And
Yeah.
you know, I've tried to write the book so they will stand alone,
Right,
so that you can pick it up, read them out of sequence,
right.
references to earlier stories, references to things, events that happened earlier. I think I always leave enough explanation that you're not going to be lost, so
Yeah.
that you can read them out of sequence. You might not understand all the subtle nuances of the story, but hopefully you'll just be tempted to go and get those earlier books.
Right.
But you can read them by themselves and be happy with it, even though it is very much a series.
Okay.
It's all coldly calculated.
Are you gonna read some excerpts or? No?
Would you like me to read something?
Well, I'm
Sure.
only one person, but I would.
I'd be very happy to.
Thank
Fine.
you.
I'll set you up with a little bit
So-
from Black Schooner. How's
That'd be a
that?
great way to wrap it.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah.
good.
I'll read the prologue. Kind of sets the tone for the book. As the large motor yacht rounded Appledore Island and approached Gosport Harbor, the lights of the New Hampshire shoreline gleamed in the distance behind it. It was late summer and the moon had not yet risen, which made the dark void between the mainland and the island seem even darker. 6 miles out. That's how far the Isles of Shoals were from Portsmouth, but they felt so much more remote, perfect for his purposes. During the trip out, few words had been exchanged between the two men on board. Do you see the schooner? His slight French accent seemed more pronounced when he whispered. I don't have much of a French accent. Maintaining his gaze forward, the man at the wheel replied, yes, while at the same time thinking, but why are they tied up to the pier? 5 minutes later, they entered the mooring field in the harbor. To their right, the security lights from the pier illuminated the schooner, and it appeared that there were several people on her deck watching their arrival. Not too close. Remember, we need privacy. No lights. He spoke in a voice barely louder than a whisper, as if that would keep outsiders from knowing their intent. In the inky blackness of the night, the lights from the hotel reflected off the water, rendering the other boats in the harbor to mere silhouettes. There, said the helmsman. He pointed at one of the moorings as the yacht slid deeper into the harbor. Perfect. The yacht came to a stop, and they worked together to quickly secure it to the mooring. Now we wait. A few hours later, he stared at the newcomers who had just motored over from the black schooner, which was still tied to the pier. Other than the low hum of the trawler's air conditioning system, silence filled the cabin. The closed curtains and the dim red glow of a single small light in the cabin highlighted the importance of the meeting. It seemed natural to keep their voices low and conversation short. He looked at the three faces in front of him. Gentlemen, We have worked together successfully for many years, and I cannot, will not, allow anything to interfere with our operation." As the others nodded, he focused his gaze on the helmsman. "You have been able to keep us under their radar for a very long time, but I am concerned that some things are getting out of hand and that there are too many loose ends. I'll take care of it. Make sure that you do."
Intriguing.
So that gets us
Nice.
started.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Very well done.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. These books are not mysteries in the pure sense of like an Agatha Christie or a Sherlock Holmes, that kind of a mystery. I think these books are more just about the lives of the characters, and they just happen to get pulled into circumstances and events that have an element of mystery. Sometimes, as the reader, you are trying to figure out the mystery and puzzle it out. In other cases, you know what's happening, but the characters don't. And you're going through their lives as they deal with those situations. And it's fun. It just kind of is how it happened. It's a fictional story. So I really don't have a lot of constraints on me. And it's just up to my storytelling capability. Writing the stories, the best way I can describe it, is that when I sit down every morning to work, all right, I'll describe it this way. We're going to use Downton Abbey as a good example, just because it's fresh in everybody's mind, and it had a big impact, okay? But it was a series, and each week, when that show ended, you were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And you were looking forward to the next day, or the next week's episode, to see where their lives were going. That same thing happens to people all over with the old soap operas, this is my soap opera, and people don't want to miss it. It's that continuing. Well, that's what my daily writing is like. I sit down to work in the morning, and I'm like, well, where are these guys going to take me today? What are they going to do? And I don't always know. And sometimes I have a sense of the direction the story's going in, but there are other times when I sit down and I'm writing, and it's like, I'm not sure where it's going. But then they talk to me, and they dictate the direction the story goes in. So it's like my own daily soap opera. My self-imposed deadline is a target is a book a year, and so I finish and get a book out in early November. I spend the end of the year trying to give it as strong an introduction to the world, and then usually by the middle of January I start writing the next story. Sometimes I go into that next story with ideas already in place. Sometimes I go into that with not a clue, but I start the process. And the characters really write the stories for me. I live through them. And so, when I'm writing scenes that Jack is the prime character in, I essentially have to think like Jack. When I'm writing scenes that are essentially Max, his girlfriend, she's a little bit younger than he is, I have to become her. If I need to have a scene with Gladys, the 70 or 80-year-old birdwatcher lady, kind of eccentric lady in town, I have to become that person. And so it gives me a chance to play with these different people and kind of, see how do they react to these other situations, to try and keep it so that it makes sense. I know normal people. I don't know any detectives. I'm not drawn to necessarily that. I find it more interesting to see the relationships between people, how they affect each other, how they develop, how they ebb and flow, the relationships ebb and flow, and how that all ties together. I think it's interesting the way, you have friends and you have acquaintances. And these books, the cast of characters, some are friends, some are acquaintances. Sometimes acquaintances become very good friends because of circumstances that they get drawn into together, and they have a shared common experience. I think it's kind of a, I don't know how to best put it. I think they're close enough to real life that the reader can identify with them on a much closer level, and yet there's just enough of that exotic event that you can still kind of look at it. For example, I really enjoy Lee Child's Jack Reacher books. They're fun to read. They're exciting. But I really can't relate to Jack Reacher. It's just not it's not part of my world. But I can relate to these people. And I think for a lot of readers, maybe that's part of the attraction, is that there is a certain flight of imagination that's involved, but at the same time it's grounded in, this is kind of what goes on as we muddle through our lives.